Good morning, committee. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to House Labor and Health and Social Services Committee, and to those that are online, thank you for joining us. Mr. Caldwell, I will call the meeting to order, and if you can take the roll call.
Representative Clouston.
Here.
Representative Guggenmoss.
Here.
Representative Heft. Representative McCann.
Here.
Representative Ottman.
Here.
Representative Stibar.
Absent.
Representative Wasserberger. Representative Yen.
Here.
Chairman Rodriguez-Williams. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Okay, so good morning. We have three bills on the agenda today, and we'll see how far we get. The first bill that we have is House Bill 222, Medical Ethics Defense Act, followed by House Bill 274, Biological Males and Women's Sports, and then House Bill 323, SNAP Benefits Waiver Request. For those of you just joining us, I'm going to read some of our rules for committee. We have a sheet out front of the meeting room if you'd like to read them yourself, but for those of us that are joining online, I'll briefly go over them. Committee members, please remember to keep your phones on silent, and those in the audience. Although it may seem an awkward formality, speakers will address their comments and questions to the chairman, not to individual committee members or to others in attendance. This helps us avoid personalities and comments of a personal nature. Comments will be directed to the issue under discussion by the committee. Distracting comments on unrelated side issues are out of order. Speakers will avoid personal criticism, ridicule, or name-calling directed at anyone else in attendance at the meeting. This includes comments of a personal nature directed at other speakers, audience members, or members of the committee. For audience members, we expect you will refrain from any behavior that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Specifically, the rules prohibit speaking out loud when another person is talking, carrying on loud and distracting side conversations, any shouting, clapping, booing in response to a speaker's comment. Our guidelines are very simple. We just ask that everyone conducts himself in a civil and respectful manner at all times during the meeting. I'll place House Bill 222, Medical Ethics Defense Act, back on the table. For those of you just joining us, we heard public comment from this on this bill during our last meeting, and the public comment was closed. The committee moved the bill was seconded, and we're at the point right now where we are going to work the bill. So that's where we're leaving off. So committee, at this time, I would ask for discussion or amendments on House Bill 222.
Madam Chair.
Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we had an amendment suggested to us, line 920. After demonstrates, take out beyond a reasonable doubt and change that to clear and convincing evidence. That discussion was more standardized language.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion? Or just
yes.
Discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that line 920, we strike beyond a reasonable doubt and instead insert clear and convincing evidence.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Yin. Discussion on Representative Clouston's amendment. Representative Guggenmoss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I talked with some people about that amendment, and they thought that amendment would allow people to disobey the ultrasound requirement if that were to pass, for instance, because they couldn't prove by clear and convincing evidence that they have a strong ethical objection. So I think it kind of undermines the very intent of this bill. That amendment would, is what I'm gathering.
Thank you. Representative Yin.
Madam Chair, I seconded for discussion, but I don't like putting clear and convincing evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt in there, because that essentially creates a standard that normally the body that decides what their standard is decides. So this is, I mean, a little overreaching, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of what that example would look like. So does it make it harder? So we're talking about the licensing board, essentially, that's probably going to be the one, has to demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that the healthcare professional's speech was the direct cause of, I don't know how this affects the ultrasound bill. So we're saying that, I'm sorry, it's early on a Monday, 8 a.m. on a Monday. So maybe I need clear and convincing evidence on how this would affect that.
Vice Chairman Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Yin agreed that this does not influence that bill one way or the other. What this is that this is for conscience of individuals, and it doesn't make law, break law, or whatever. It just says if someone has a medical or not medical, moral or ethical reason not to perform certain activities, that they are not held to that. And that would be made known very clearly upon employment or any other thing that they are about to do. It won't be a secret, or it won't be sprung on anybody. The bill is to protect people from being discriminated against in their employment or in their business practices to do what they, as an individual person, have their First Amendment rights to do. Thank you.
Further discussion. Representative Wasserberger.
So one of the things that I thought of during the weekend over this bill that I don't think ever got brought up in the discussion is I remember for a while there was some staff members in the hospitals that, you know, if they chose to not be vaccinated, that they had to wear a pin that said they weren't vaccinated and they were required to wear a mask. Would that protect those individuals to their right to privacy with this bill? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Representative Wasserberger. We do have a motion on the table for an amendment. That's okay, no worries. If we can, committee, try to stick to the amendment. Any further discussion or questions on the amendment? Okay. Seeing none, by a show of hands and a voice vote, please. If you are in favor of Representative Clouston's amendment, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. No. Okay. Representative Clausen, that amendment has failed. Are there any additional amendments or discussion on the bill? So Representative Wasserberger, this would be the time to further discuss the bill. If you,
Can I, so
please,
should I?
please, Representative Wasserberger.
Alrighty, my apologies for going down the bunny trail there. Yeah, that was kind of just something that I thought of over the weekend. If that would also protect, to repeat the question again, that was something that I thought of over this weekend was during the pandemic when there was a lot of constraints on encouraging the vaccines for people. And then there were some people that felt that that wasn't their best health decision for themselves. However, in the hospitals, they were required to, some of the nurses that I spoke to told me that they had to wear a pin that said they were unvaccinated and they were required to wear a mask when others weren't. would that protect those staff members with this bill and the medical ethics?
Vice Chair Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In those particular cases, I believe it depends. We had a listed pandemic rather than a local health designation. Currently, people cannot say, I would let me see how I want to say it. I would not get a vaccination. Everybody was at work, everybody was living life, and all of a sudden, here we are. And so it's required, it's mandated, and all of those things. It was a dreadful time for people. Is that a form of discrimination to make you wear that pin or whatever? Those things we had to deal with. What this bill is trying to say, or what this bill is saying, is that in future things, you as an individual have that right of conscience to do. If you're not going to go with mRNA vaccinations, then you won't. And that will be made apparent beforehand so that you are not discriminated against, that you are not pointed out, but that you are given that right to work at a facility that may feel the same as you do, but just to open those doors. So looking back, I believe everybody handled things the best that they could, but this is going forward, how we can give people those rights to work or to own businesses as they see fit.
Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for clarification, if an employer has a policy that they want followed and there's an employee who doesn't want to follow that, the employee can say, no, I'm not going to follow the policies of this institution that I work at, and have an employee contract. So are we taking away the right of an employer to set their own policies in their own facility?
Vice Chair Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Clausen, what I believe would happen was there would be, when this goes through, is that there would be those conversations between employers. And depending on what business it is if it's a huge facility where other employees would be there to fill in those gaps, that would be, but there's only distinct things that people would say no to. And no, it's just to do no harm. It is not in emergency instances, it is not. So those things, it's just to clarify things, and I believe that conversation should be between the employer and the employee. They can't just spring up one day and say, no, I'm not doing that. That would be a conversation that's gonna go on.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my understanding that the bill is about protecting providers from being forced to participate in procedures and treatment specifically. Just further discussion on your question, Representative Klauston, I don't think it pertains to that. So just my take on it. Further discussion on the bill or further amendments from the committee? Okay. Sensing the urge to vote.
Move the bill.
Okay. It's already been moved. So,
Okay.
yeah, last
Okay,
meeting.
question.
Yeah, question being called.
Sorry.
Mr. Caldwell, would you please call the roll? It's okay
This is
though.
a roll call vote for House Bill 222. Representative Klauston,
Aye.
Representative Guggenmoss,
Aye.
Representative Heft, Representative McCann, Representative Ottman,
Aye.
Representative Stivar, Representative Wasserberger, Representative Yen,
No.
Chairman Rodriguez Williams. Madam Chairman, that is 7 aye, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. So House Bill 222 has passed committee. Representative Ottman, you will present that bill on the floor.
Okay.
Okay, committee, the next bill now on the table is House Bill 274, Biological Males in Women's Sports. I am the sponsor, so I'll turn the committee over to the good vice chair.
Chairman Williams, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Labor and Health Committee, members of the committee. My name is Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams, and I bring to you today House Bill 274, titled Biological Males in Women's Sports, and ask for your favorable consideration. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I would walk you through the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So I'm here today to introduce to you House Bill 274. Members of the body, in 2023, the legislature enacted a statute that we are looking at amending through this bill. The bill was a good start, but had, in my perception, loopholes in it that need cleaned up. Today, the protections for women's sports only apply to grades 7 through 12, and we all know that, I believe this is unacceptable with the current situation regarding higher education, specifically within our land-grant university. This bill also extends protections to our collegiate athletes in community colleges in the state. The 2023 bill also created gapping exceptions in the form of a government commission that allowed males to participate in female sports on a case-by-case basis. I believe that we need to draw the line. We need to draw a line in the sand and say that it should never, or never should a female sport or space be forced to accommodate a male. This bill is about protecting girls, our girls specifically within the state of Wyoming. This bill repeals a commission and creates a black and white clear rule. Boys' sports are for boys, girls' sports are for girls. This bill also creates an enforcement mechanisms. It creates a private right of action for athletes harmed by a violation of the law. It also creates protections for schools who uphold the law from attacks by nefarious actors. In drafting and in conversations about the new administration's actions on protecting women's sports, I do bring to you two amendments to consider for the committee to consider, and you should have a handout of that as well. So, Madam Chair, on page 1, section 5, or section 1 of the bill, we create a new section under Wyoming Statute 139-124 in the Government Claims Act. The new section states that a government entity is liable for damages resulting from a violation of Statute 2125-102, which we will discuss in more In section 2 of the bill, we amend a few definitions and create new subsections. On section 3, we repeal, as I described earlier, section 16.4405A and 21.25.201 through 21.205, 25.204. And this act is effective July 1st. So I would stand for any questions from the committee.
Any questions? Committee? Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, Representative, also Madam Chairman, how, can you help me understand, I'm trying to read in this bill with the bill that we have on second reading on the floor. How do the bills interact?
Madam Chairman, Representative Yin, I would say that my bill, this bill, House Bill 274, is cleaner and simpler. I don't get into PE or interscholastic sports or anything like that. It's very simple. It's aimed at protecting girls and women in Wyoming, specific to higher education. So it's a little more refined, a little slimmer. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it does create it does have enforcement mechanisms. So there is a private right of action in there, and so forth. So a little different.
Follow up?
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. So what would happen if we pass both? I mean, they both also deal with college sports, right? So do they, will there be any conflict if we pass both?
Madam Chair, Representative Yen, I honestly don't have, an answer as to what the future would, in the future, what would happen. Again, I think that there's some significant differences in the bills, and how that plays out within conference committee or that future process, I can't predict. So thank you for your question.
Additional questions? Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairwoman, for presenting this. I have a question on the back page in the notes. It states, this bill also expands the prohibition of males competing in an athletic activity designated for females to grades kindergarten through 6 and institutions of higher education. So reading through the bill, does it specifically say kindergarten through 6th grade?
Madam Vice Chair, Representative Clouston, thank you for your question. As I mentioned in the presentation, I did give you a amendment for your consideration. And within that amendment is one committee consideration. It's actually number 1 there, and it says on page 2, line 22, strike 7 and insert kindergarten. So it's policy decision for the committee. Thank you for your question.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing no further questions. Would this be the time to move the amendment? No? We'll wait. Look, anyone in the public in favor of this bill? Please state your name, who you represent, and if you're for or not. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kathy Sigliano. I'm just here representing myself, and I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Patricia McCoy, and I'm the Chapter Chair of Laramie County Moms for Liberty, and I am here today to testify in support of House Bill 274, the bill establishing liability and enforcement mechanism to protect women's sports. This bill addresses a critical gap in our current system by establishing clear liability for violations and protecting whistleblowers. Without these enforcement tools, schools and athletic organizations face immense external pressure to compromise women's sports. But House Bill 274 gives them the legal backbone to stand firm. The bill's private cause of action is particularly important. When violations occur, it gives students, parents, and schools the legal standing to protect women's sports through injunctive relief and damages. The 3-year statute of limitations ensures reasonable time to address violations while providing certainty to all parties. Some critics say this bill is discriminatory. Really? Is having separate weight classes in boxing discriminatory? Is having age divisions in youth sports discriminatory? Is having varsity and junior varsity teams discriminatory? No, these categories exist for fair competition. Women's sports exist for the same reason. Some argue this is about inclusion, but what about including female athletes? What about the girls losing their scholarships, their records, and their roster spots? Imagine telling the 1972 advocates of Title IX that 50 years later we'd be deliberately disadvantaging female athletes in the name of progress. My favorite opposition claim is this only affects a few athletes. Well, how many female athletes need to lose opportunities before it actually matters? If someone said only a few people are cheating on tests, would we eliminate anti-cheating policies? If only a few athletes were using performance-enhancing drugs, would we eliminate those rules too? The reality is that biological differences create significant athletic advantages. This isn't politics, it's science. That's why we have separate competitions for women, and that's why we need legal protections to maintain them. This bill provides those protections. It gives schools the legal framework to maintain fair competition. It gives female athletes and their families recourse when their opportunities are undermined, and it protects those who stand up for women's sports from retaliation. I urge you to support House Bill 274 today. Wyoming's female athletes deserve more than just rules on paper. They deserve real protections with real enforcement mechanisms. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Committee? Yes, Representative Yin.
Madam Chair, thank you. Ms. McCoy, thanks for being here. So, I mean, we have the bill that was passed before, right? That put in all of these enforcement mechanisms before. So the new enforcement mechanism is essentially private cause of action. I'm guessing, what do you see problems that were caused by the previous bill where there was a situation that you think that should have been acted on that wasn't acted on, that we would need a private cause of action? Because for me, I think if you create private causes of action, you create a situation where harassment could actually ensue via the courts. And so I guess my concern is, does this solve, are there enforcement problems currently that you've seen?
Ms. McCoy?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Representative Yin. That's an excellent question, and I can see where you're coming from. I do actually see instances across the nation right now where this is actually a thing, including our university here. We have the ongoing situation with the sorority and the girls there. So it is still happening. It is still an issue, and this helps tighten that up and close those holes.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I neglected to ask for bill sponsor agencies. Are there any agencies? And then I'll come back to public comment. Were there any agencies for the bill? Okay, then we did all right. Okay, next, public comment. not in favor of the bill, please state your name and who you represent, and please keep the comment short.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Santi Murillo. I am the Communications Coordinator for Wyoming Equality, and we are in opposition of this bill. For those of you who don't know, I was the first transgender student athlete at the University of Wyoming in the years 2017 to 2019. And I'm here to say that this bill is a solution in search of a problem here. This bill is not only discriminatory, but also harmful to Wyoming students and institutions of higher education. First and foremost, this legislation unfairly targets transgender athletes and denies them the opportunity to participate in sports, an activity that fosters teamwork, discipline, and personal growth. Additionally, the bill's provision allowing for lawsuits against schools and governmental entities places an undue burden on our educational institutions. Wyoming should be striving to create a welcoming and supportive environment for all students, rather than pushing legislation that further isolates a vulnerable population. Wyoming has always prided itself on its values of fairness, respect, and community. This bill contradicts those principles by attempting to regulate who can and cannot participate in student athletics based on gender identity. We accept that there are compromises to be made. We accept that there needs to be a fair playing field, and we get that. But bills that promote segregation are not the answer. In between segregation and total acceptance, there is a middle ground, and that is the solution. We have heard a lot of talk this legislative session about institutional discrimination and how we don't want that in Wyoming, but this bill promotes just that. I urge you to reject this, and I'm happy to stand for any questions, and I highly encourage them.
Thank you, Ms. Morello. Any questions? Yes, Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you for coming and testifying today and addressing your concerns with the body. I'm just wondering, you were talking about certain vulnerabilities, for folks that, like your groups that do, basketball and have the wheelchair accessibility and things like that, they typically create groups for that type of sport. Have you guys ever considered that as a solution for folks in that category to address like the issues of vulnerability or?
Ms. Wasserberger. Oh, no. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I apologize. Ms. Morello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Wasserberger. Personally, separate but equal is not the answer. And especially how this bill would affect so few student athletes. And it is true. There's arguments that this is an overwhelming problem, but it's not. One thing that really frustrates me is Representative Ian had brought up, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, was that there are multiple bills this legislative session that addresses this issue. There's about 3, and realistically, that's 1 bill per transgender athlete in this state.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please state your name and who you're with, and please keep the comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Sarah Burlingame. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming Equality. Thank you, committee, for letting us talk today. We are in opposition to this bill. As my colleague Santi Murillo said, we couldn't field a team if we tried. But I appreciate the question because that means that you are looking for a solution. And the problem that we've had is that transgender athletes and transgender Wyomingites have been treated as though they just need to not exist. They can't be athletes, they can't be in the public space, and bills like this further the idea that the only thing that you can do is have them not exist. And so the information I wanted to give you today, because I think that some of you are new to this and may not have it, is what we have done for the last 10 years. So for 10 years, the Wyoming High School Activities Association has had a rule about how transgender athletes can participate in K through 12. And what the rule started with was the belief that all students have the right to participate. And it lists the things that flow out of participation in sports: how to lose, how to play fairly, how to develop camaraderie, how to balance schoolwork and athletics, all things that serve you as an adult. And from there, the High School Activities Association said, you needed to ask the student where they wanted to play. We have transgender athletes who say, I'm fine playing with a sport that I was identified with. It all begins with the student themselves, because most good education begins with, where is this student going to thrive? Where are they going to feel comfortable? And after that, it said, if they have an unfair advantage, if they have an advantage that can only be accounted for the fact, for instance, that they went through male puberty and they are physically dominant, then you can challenge their right to participate. But in order to challenge their right to participate, you have to have standing. So that was Wyoming's way of saying, we understand that people are cruel. We understand that like the Westboro Baptist Church or like hate groups might come in and just find, a ninth grader not hurting anyone and want to attack them simply for the reason that they exist. But we were so concerned with fairness. We were so concerned with setting up a process that allowed both sides to be heard that we said, no, you have to have standing. And so if you had standing, you could challenge it. And then the High School Activities Association would put together a panel of 3 people. And one of those 3 people had to have some experience with endocrinology. One of those 3 people had to know what they were talking about and say, yeah, you know what, this person has an advantage and it can only be accounted for. And then the next step was, well, now where do they go? Like Representative Wasserberger said, is there an intramural sport that they could join that doesn't have this? Although bills like this would say, nope, not even there. So when we look at what we have done in the past, we would say we were in search of a solution. We understood that all parents may not believe the same things that we believe. Some parents may, from a very early age, have accepted that their child had a gender that was different than the one that they were assigned at birth. And we decided that the state couldn't compel parents to share the same beliefs as other people. So that is why we resist this bill. We have a belief in a limited government and the limits of how the government can tell parents what they can and cannot do with their children. And further, we have a belief that when we look for solutions, not segregation, we come up with pretty good ideas. They create a level playing field and they create fairness. Happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Ms. Burlingame?
Yeah.
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, thank you, Ms. Burlingame. So, Ms. Burlingame, you would essentially say that if this bill passed, kids wouldn't be able to play, trans kids wouldn't be able to play in intramural sports. I mean, they basically wouldn't be able to do any of that unless they did the wholly uncomfortable thing of playing with a team of all boys if they identified as a girl and basically be ostracized the entire time. Is that correct? Or would they just not be able to play at all?
Madam Chairwoman, Representative Yen.
Yes.
Yeah, the way we read this bill, and I think it's pretty clear on the face of it, is that they would not be allowed to participate unless they participated with the group that they were assigned at birth. And I mean, we will just say there are students who would willingly do that. There are students in elementary school who say, that's easier for me right now. We have stories of students in very small rural towns, like a boy who doesn't want to play football. He doesn't like football. And so the girls' volleyball team said, do you want to play volleyball with us? And he said, yeah. And he was tiny. He couldn't physically dominate anyone. Bless his heart. But he played and was accepted, and those rural ranch moms baked him cupcakes for game day, made him feel included. That is what we are saying is a possibility here. When we leave it up to the families and the school districts, that students can be accepted in these teams, and that it should start with what the student and their families themselves want.
Any other questions? Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Burlingame, for being here again in your testimony, but can you show me in this bill where it would exclude intramural sports? I'm not seeing that myself.
Madam Chairwoman, Representative Clouston, I think I've got it pulled up here. And it is, let me just say, there are 3 bills that do very similar things, and I might have misspoken. I think the way we read 21-25-101 definitions, A, Romanet 2, interscholastic athletic activity means that a student represents the student school in a Wyoming High School Activities Association sanctioned sport. We think that it is not clear whether that would capture intramural or not. And just because different school districts have promulgated different rules for their intramural sports, mostly based on just the scarcity of players, right? Like, lots of school districts can't field an intramural. So everything is, yeah.
Any follow-up?
Madam Chairwoman, can I follow up on that? So if the intent, Representative Closton,
Ms. Burlingame, yes, go ahead.
thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Representative Closton, if the intent was to amend it to make clear that intramural sports were not captured in this, we would still say, I mean, how many school districts have the capacity to field intramural? It wouldn't meet the need, would be our view. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do we deal with injury? How do we deal with, someone wanting to play a sport, but being physically able to be unmatched with the group they're playing with? It's basically what I'm trying to get at. Do you understand?
Yes,
Okay,
Madam
thank
Vice
you.
Chairwoman, I do understand, and I believe that that's what Ms. Murillo was speaking to, and what the High School Activities Association addressed. I think you're asking if someone is physically dominant. Yeah, and so what our old rules said was, that's correct. You cannot be physically dominant and play. If you are going to, particularly if it's a full contact sport. But what we saw when we brought bills like this before, right, was that they captured the chess club, right? Like, they captured non-athletic sports as well. And so what our old standard said was, if you are physically dominant, we're going to find another lane for you. And someone who has standing can challenge you and say, I don't think this is an appropriate place for you. I get that you want to play this, and it's unfortunate, but you have a physical dominance that can only be accounted for by the sex that you were assigned at birth. And so this is not the appropriate place for you. And, we have people on the far left who say, well, that's not fair, right? Like, they should have the opportunity. But we really have traditionally been geared towards solutions in Wyoming, not ideology, not perfect, but how do we get kids out on the field learning these life lessons? I mean, I remember the first game I ever lost. I remember crying in the car. I remember the speeches that my coaches told me. Like, they inform who I am today, and I'm guessing it's the same for you. And so we tell those athletes, we want you to have an opportunity.
Any other questions, committee? Representative Yen?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Ms. Burlingame, we also had this amendment proposed by the sponsor about adding K through 6. What physical advantages are there in K through 6?
Madam Vice Chairwoman.
Ms. Burlingame?
Representative Yen. None.
Any other questions, committee?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, any other public comment? Yes. Yes, come on up. Yeah, 4. Well, just both come up, since there's just 2 of you. Just please state your name, who you might be with, and whether you are for or against the bill.
Hi, I'm Laura McKee, and I'm here, I'm in favor of this bill 274. I'm representing Moms for Liberty. And thank you, Chair and Committee, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Laura McKee, and I humbly ask for your vote in this bill. I'd like to start by echoing the words of Riley Gaines yesterday. I am mad that as females, this is something we are having to do. We're having to fight and beg for inalienable rights and the wholeness that is being stripped away from us and our daughters. I am mad that the word biological is being attached to my being. I am mad that the word cis is being added to those who are, and taking away the unique divineness of how we are created in our mother's wombs. For we are female. There is no genetic or man-altered versions. We are having to fight for our spaces, activity, and privacy. The powers who wish to take away this right are casting delusions of scare tactics, such as who is going to do these genital exams, who will force themselves on another person to judge if they are female enough or not. This is a tactic that's being used too often to create fear-mongering and Hollywood dramatics for attention. If those who are looking for a space, let them create their own, but not by taking away ours and not by taking away our female spaces either, or male. Once again, we're fighting for female and male rights, not a theory of what a woman is or not. I ask for your favorable consideration on the bill. And also in it had talked about the whistleblowers, and I just think it's important that they must be protected and not discriminated against in any way. And the government should never have immunity. We all know if we don't pass bills that have teeth and there's no consequences, any kind of laws, they will not be followed and there will be no ramifications for that. So thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. McKee. Any questions, committee? Representative Wasserberger.
Hi there, thank you for coming and sharing your testimony. I'm just wondering if you've seen this as an issue that's evident here in Wyoming particularly.
I have seen it
Ms.
here.
McKee,
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I respond?
please.
I have seen an issue with it. I'm from a county that has had a lawsuit in reference to this, and I attend the school board meetings. I'm very active. I'm a mother, grandmother, and formerly a foster mother. So yes, I have seen this have an impact in my own community. Thank you.
Follow-up? Representative Wasserberger?
Thanks. As far as that goes, is it just kind of like where you see, like, I don't know, I'm just kind of giving examples here to get a.
Representative?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I please speak? I'm so
Representative.
sorry, we
It's okay.
gotta fix some of these bad habits, but thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Just to elaborate on that, I'm just trying to get a visual here. So as far as seeing issues of evidence, is it similar to like seeing kind of like what you see kind of on your on some of your main news, like where you've got somebody that's running in a sport, they're getting first place, and then you've got your other ladies in the sport that are they do that protest where they don't even bother going up to the stand because they were significantly, any type of examples like that, or?
Well, I mean, we all know that it impacted Wyoming, right?
Ms.
Because
McKee?
of, oh, I'm so sorry, Madam Chair, may I respond? We all know that it has impacted Wyoming because of the, what happened with the college sports, the volleyball, and then forfeiting the game, and then, that impacted them as well. But I'm very heavily involved with children, and that's the biggest part of it. We had some children in our area that were transitioned without parental knowledge, different than what we're talking about here. But again, it just goes back to my belief is, like they're saying in kindergarten through 6th, there's not, until they go through puberty, there's not as much difference there. But that's when things change as far as the strength of men or women. And I just believe that we really need to protect women. Title IX should go back to what it was originally intended to do, and that is to protect women.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. McKee? Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name, who you're with, and whether you are for or against the bill.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of this committee. My name is Sophia Gomelski. I'm a student at the university, and I'm just here representing myself in urging you to vote no on this bill. I'm urging you to vote no because frankly, I think that this bill just is not what the students want. I think that as students, we're very concerned that this bill is a representation of government overreach. When it comes to, our university, our volleyball team decided that they would play San Jose State, which is a team with a transgender player on it. But then following a series of threats from state lawmakers, the university decided to override the team's decision and decide for the students that they would not play. My friends and female athletes are too afraid to come here and tell you that they're upset about this because of how politicized this topic has become. And I think that passing this bill just affirms their concerns that the state government and government would rather force solutions to problems that don't exist at their expense and at the expense of their trans peers. The bill very clearly states that an interscholastic athletic activity means sports for which eligibility requirements for participation by a student athlete are established by a national association for the promotion or regulation of collegiate athletics, which means that there are standards already set in place. I don't believe it's the role of the state government to be overriding the standards that have been set by experts, athletics, and athletes and athletic organizations. I simply believe that this bill represents government overreach, so I'm asking you to uphold our Wyoming tradition of limited government and not pass this bill because I believe that it also violates the equal protection of our Constitution and it costs us our values as the equality state. Thank you so much, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Melkinski, right?
Close, Gomelski.
Gomelski.
There you go, yeah.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other testimony? Okay, do we have online?
No, Madam
Oh, I'm
President.
sorry, one more. Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. Please state your name, who you are with, and whether you are for or against the bill. Thank you.
My name is Rick Simino. I am a teacher here in Cheyenne, although I've taken off the day that I am not representing my school or my district at all. I maybe shouldn't say whether I'm for or against the bill. I honestly don't know. I have plenty more questions. As I read the bill seems to be not necessarily focused on whether or not we are allowing this, but whether or not we're allowing people to sue schools and districts on account of this. And I would be surprised to hear that any individual is not already at liberty to sue a school or a district. I'm also thrown off by the questions of harm or damages. If a transgender student participates in girls' basketball, for example, how much are we awarding for a rebound? How much are we awarding for 3 points scored? The concept of harm, the concept of ability here is very nebulous. And it just seems odd that this is something that we're doing. While I'm here, and I'm obviously out of my depth in terms of endocrinology or knowing any specifics here. That said, I'm happy to answer any questions. I can't promise that I have any answers, but.
Thank you, Mr. Semino. Any questions, committee? Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming and sharing your side of the story. This is probably a question I should have asked some of the other folks that have came up and spoke, but it's such a tough subject and kind of awkward to ask these questions. But have you had any incidences in your college where there's people of question that are using women's locker rooms or men's locker rooms where people are growing uncomfortable in their, what you'd call a safe place? The reason I ask this is because I've spoken to people before that have told me about just stories they had of like women hiding in locker rooms and things like that, or like in the locker, like actually closing themselves into it because of just certain concerns. And so I'm just wondering if you've heard of anything like that from your school. Thank you.
Mr. Semino?
Madam Chair. So Representative Wasserberger, first let me mention I'm in your district. Congratulations on your win this past November. I have not. I am at a high school. I teach math, and there are very few locker rooms that we rush into during math. I do have a fair number of transgender students over the last couple of years. And I will say that they've been met with nothing but acceptance.
Thank you, Mr. Semino. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. Do we have public testimony online?
No, Madam Vice Chairman.
None? Any other remarks from the bringer of the bill? No? Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, moved by Representative Gugemas. Second by Representative Heft. Discussion? Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. You know, one of the things I'm trying to figure out here, and we're gonna have to deal with this as a committee or on the floor, is individual sports versus team sports. So if we have a transgender male who wants to play women's volleyball or soccer or hockey or basketball, right, they're gonna affect all players on the field. But if we have a transgender male who wants to participate in a track event, right, that's gonna affect one event or two events, right? But I don't want to see the whole women's track team have to forfeit the whole meet. Everyone's taken out because there's a transgender male in one event. You know, there's 90 schools that have female collegiate wrestling right now. So it could be the same thing. If there's one transgender male in one weight class, that female could forfeit that weight class. But again, I don't want to have to see if we have a female wrestling team, I'd hate to see the whole team have to forfeit because of one match. So that's kind of what I'm trying to, you know, looking at individual competition versus team sports is, I guess, where I'm going down this road. And I'd appreciate any feedback from other members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative. Any comments? Representative Gugemas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair, does this bill force people to not compete if there is a transgender on a team? I'm just not sure if that's the case.
I haven't seen where the bill says the team has to forfeit. I don't believe that's in there anywhere. Representative Klauston?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the question. I mean, I guess that is a question here. I read this as if the transgender male is allowed to the school lets the transgender male participate in the female sport, right, then they can be sued. There can be disciplinary action against that university or high school or junior high team. So I think that's the intent of this bill, is just telling these schools, if there's a transgender male in that sport, the competition can't take place, because if they let it take place and someone gets hurt, then that school can get sued. So I think that's really the intent of this bill, and that's what would happen. I think we're forcing these schools to forfeit these competitions. So I think we need to work out team sport versus individual, so.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a question, Representative Clauston. Does a private right of action mean that there has to be, or could there be a private right of action rather than a forfeit? So, I mean, are the teams themselves able to decide their action? Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, so the way I read the bill is that if a parent or guardian, so this is on page 4, 8 through 14, right? So if a parent or guardian or student feels like they're harmed by a violation of the chapter, so if the team played against another team with someone who was assigned male at birth, and the school let them do that, the school is open to being sued by that parent or student.
Any other questions? Representative Williams, Rodriguez Williams, I have a question for you. On page 4, line 9, where it says, any student or a parent or guardian of a student who is harmed by a violation of this chapter. What does that mean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for the question and for directing it towards me. So I would just draw your attention, you're talking about page 4, line 9, and it specifically says any violation of this chapter. So if you scroll back a little further in the bill, I'll kind of clear up some of the blurriness
Thank you, please.
that's been brought up too. And I'll go back to page 2. Again, as the definition amends on page 2, interscholastic athletic activity means that a student represents the student's school in a Wyoming High School Activities Association sanctioned sport. Then the amendment comes in, or a sport played at the collegiate level for which eligibility requirements for participation by a student athlete are established by a national association for the promotion or regulation of collegiate athletics. Okay, so it's pretty descriptive there, what we're covering and what we're not looking at within this bill. I know that it was brought up earlier, that there's been other legislation drafted that gets into, I would say, lower level sports, such as PE was brought up, physical education, intramural sports, club type of things. So this is a whole different level, right? And then, of course, pertaining to your question, beginning on page 3, we're opening up or amending 21-25-102, participation in school athletic activities. Okay, so yes, there is a private cause of action in the bill and a whistleblower protection in here. And again, I mean, it's pretty, I would say pretty thorough as in the amendment on page 3 and page 4. If you'd want me to further walk you through that section, I'd be happy to. But starting on line 15, if a student, if the student or a parent or guardian of a student requests a contested case pursuant to subsection F of this section, or that reports a violation of this section to any employee or representative of the school or athletic association, or files an action for damages pursuant to subsection H of the section, no government entity, any licensing of any athletic associations shall discharge or in any manner discriminate against any employee because the employee has instituted or caused to be instituted any proceedings under or related to the section, or is testified or is about to testify in any proceeding, or because any of the exercise by the employee on behalf of himself or others, any right afforded by this subsection. So then we get into what you're talking about, any student or a parent or guardian of a student who is harmed by a violation of this chapter shall have private cause of action for injunctive relief, damages, attorney's fees, or any other relief available under law against the school, government entity, licensing or accrediting organization, athletic association, or athletic association violating this chapter. So essentially what this is, again, ladies and gentlemen, is this is a bill protecting women, creating a level playing field for women in higher education. So in Wyoming, what does that look like? Our community colleges and our only land-grant university. Okay, so we have seen this come into play where there are biological males playing in women's sports in higher education, right? So again, just back to the basics. If the law is enacted, the state has an obligation to protect women, to protect women's sports in higher education. That's essentially what it does. So the bill has, as I mentioned, some legal language in there. And then again, just kind of backing up on the amendment that was proposed. Again, that's a policy decision for the committee as to whether or not they want to lower the age. There were 2 amendment suggestions in the handout. And then the second suggestion really was to conform to conform language to some of the bills that we have already passed through the House that deal with the definition of sex. And so we've passed several bills through 3rd reading in the House, and 2nd reading, I believe, that the body has chosen to amend the language. And so I brought to you that second amendment, again, as a policy decision, if the committee wants to amend this bill to match the language of already existing or already passed bills through the House. So.
Thank you, Representative, Madam Chairman. Any questions, additional questions? Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair. Could you speak to my question earlier about trying to divide out individual sports and team sports, and just the concerns there that were talked about since you weren't up here to discuss?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Representative Clouston. Again, I would say that as the bill sponsor, I believe the bill clearly is clearly written, again, to only address protecting women in our community colleges and our only land-grant university for our female athletes in particular. I don't think it gets into the weeds when it comes to intramurals and things like that, I guess is where, I hope I answered your question. Clarify if you need to. Yeah.
Follow-up, Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair. So again, if there's a transgender male wants to compete in the track at the collegiate level in the 400-meter dash, does the whole track team have to, from our university, would the whole track team then have to not compete because we have an individual partaking in one individual event? Would we tell our athletes in that event they can't participate? Because, maybe they can't take first place now because that athlete's in there and they just physically can't beat them. So I'm just trying to see, I'm trying to work through this in my head, how we're gonna look at team sports and individual sports, and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, Representative Clouston. So I would compare it to any other law that's enacted. When a law is enacted, it's well-known, and entities that it pertains to get notice of the change in law in the state. And my hope is that those that oversee the athletic departments in our community colleges and the university, they would obviously have notice of this. And those that they're playing against, whether it's a team sport or an individual sport, like you mentioned, or an individual competition, the other team would be on notice too, that Wyoming protects women's sports, and that biological males are not allowed to compete in women's sports at those levels. And so obviously, there's people who do not obey the law. No matter what law it is, there's lawbreakers out there. My hope that doesn't happen in this case, but in the event that it does, it's spelled out in the bill. But the state and those that oversee athletics will be obviously notified of the law change and have an obligation to protect these female athletes in the event that the law is enacted.
Thank you, Representative, Madam Chair. Okay. Committee? Any other questions, comments? Okay. Yes, Representative Heft.
Language in this bill consistent with other bills that have already been passed, that we insert these amendments.
Do you want both of them or
Both or just the second one?
Both.
Representative Heft, could you repeat that?
I would make a motion that we accept both of these amendments as written to be inserted in this bill to make language consistent with other bills that have already been passed.
Thank you. Okay, the Representative Heft has moved that the amendment be accepted. Do I hear a second? Representative Gugemaz seconded.
Madam Chairman,
Representative Yin.
I'm going to divide the amendments so we deal with each one individually. So with the K through 6 part, so number 1 being Division 1, and then number 2 being Division 2.
I see.
Okay, the amendment has been divided. Okay. Section 1,
So Madam Chairman,
Representative Yin.
thank you. K through 6 is all about kids just playing together. They're not competing, they're playing to have fun. Putting government bureaucracy over kids just trying to have fun and not dealing with any sort of competition is really ridiculous. And if it goes to the floor, I'm going to challenge it on germaneness if we do adopt the amendment.
Any other discussion? I would just make a comment that I have noticed, and it's amazing to me, but that the sports in the lower grades is getting very prominent and very substantial in the lower grades. So what, do you disagree? I mean, is what you're attempting to do with that, is that disagreement to that or agreement, or I guess I'm just asking for clarification, please.
Gotcha.
Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my opinion on the matter is, kindergarten through sixth grade, there's not large physical differences yet. Maybe actually, a lot of times the females are more developed than the males at that age. Puberty hasn't really hit the males yet. So, and then in our smaller communities, if we're going to limit males from participating with females, I think we're going to take away some of the opportunities for everyone to participate together. I was one of the co-sponsors of the bill 2 years ago, so I'm in favor of this legislation overall, but I think at this grade levels, kindergarten through sixth grade, I think we should allow the communities to make their own decisions. If the boys and girls can play together, and there's probably advantages socially for those kids playing together. So I guess hopefully that helps your answer. And yeah, I guess I'm against this amendment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Should we vote? On division number one? Yes. Okay. All in favor, all in favor of division number one, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign?
No.
Okay, it has failed.
Division 2 on that, no comment.
Division two? Okay, no comments. All in favor of division number two, which is, okay, on here. All right. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of division number two, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay? Okay, division two has passed. Yes. Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just point of order, with Representative Stybar being absent, is that a no vote?
I believe so.
Madam Chairman, so the way we treat members marked as absent in our House rules, which is actually different than our Senate rules, the House marks absent as aye votes, and excused just doesn't count towards the vote, but when they're marked absent, they're an aye vote. That's in our House rules. I can bring up the House rule if whatever number it is, if anyone's interested, they can ask me.
Point of clarification, would it be, are the rules the same for House and committee? Or on, floor rules and committee rules?
Madam Chairman, it's specific to committees, so that's about committees.
So with a vote, with a voice vote, we did have an aye, but the majority was, okay, so that would go along. And second part of the amendment, number 2, has passed the committee. Further discussion or anything? Okay. Committee? I guess it's time to vote on the bill. Would you please call the roll?
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 274 as amended. Representative Klauston.
Aye.
Representative Guggenmoss.
Aye.
Representative Heft.
Aye.
Representative McCann.
Aye.
Representative Ottman.
Aye.
Representative Stybar.
Absent?
Representative Wasserberger.
Aye.
Representative Yen.
No.
Chairman Rodriguez Williams. That is an aye for Chairman Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, committee. We'll go on to the next bill. Which is House Bill 323. Sorry. There you go. There you go. Here, these are all yours. Getting smoother.
Okay, committee, House Bill 323, SNAP benefits waiver request, sponsored by Representative Wasserberger, is now on the table. Representative Wasserberger, welcome. And do you have a co-presenter or not?
I thought I did, but I don't think they were able to make it. I think they were hoping to aim for Wednesday, but yeah, didn't get it scheduled just quite right, so
Okay.
we might have some people pop up in Zoom, but to my knowledge, I think it's just me.
Okay, all right. Well, please introduce to us your bill and walk us through it.
Yes, thank you so much. And so, yeah, thank you for giving me the time to present to the Labor Committee my bill on House Bill 323 on requesting waivers from the federal administration to exempt big soda and big sugar and including drug dealers for that matter. So I'm sure those folks would be late trying to find a parking stall. You know how hard it can be to find that during session, but you know, now that I think about it, big soda and big sugar may not come in support of my bill. You see, they make 1.2 billion a year from selling sugary drinks and snacks through SNAP. Alternatively, SNAP users only buy about 782 million in healthy foods. Soda is the #1 commodity bought on SNAP. I guess that means big soda and big sugar have 1.2 billion reasons not to support my bill. Yep, big soda and big sugar are reaping enormous benefits from this program. The briefing I gave you shows these corporations lobby vigorously to keep junk food purchases available within the program. Failing to provide a nutritious diet also contributes to the epidemic of obesity and preventable chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. 72% of SNAP enrollees are also enrolled in government health care, mostly provided through Medicaid. That means the taxpayers are also being asked to pick up the tab for obesity-related diseases. Thus, taxpayers are funding a growth crisis, and then they are also picking up the tab for treating the crisis. Additionally, it is a known fact that SNAP EBT cards are commonly used as a currency in the drug trade. States like Ohio, Missouri, Maine, and New York report finding collections of EBT cards during drug raids. The prosecutor in Maine referred to EBT cards as a common currency for drugs. The most pronounced case is from New York, where 2 defendants were charged with stealing $20 million in SNAP benefits. While this bill will not cure that problem, it is not unreasonable to think that the black market value of the cards will be reduced if junk food purchases are not a part of the option. You see, this bill is simple. It only asks that the governor direct his Department of Family Services staff to apply for a waiver through the USDA. That change will enable Wyoming to prevent the purchase of sugary drinks and snacks purchased through the SNAP program. Given this issue, it is a top priority for the Trump administration. I suspect the waiver would in turn be approved. Importantly, Wyoming would be viewed as the leader among all 50 states in this area. I would note that several states are being asked by Governor Sanders to follow suit there in Arkansas. The purpose of this bill is to provide a nutritious diet, not unlimited by choice. And if you are worried about limiting the program, it already does limit the purchase of alcohol and tobacco. Now, I know the legislature generally refrains from offering guidance to the governor's office. This ask is simply that the governor's staff apply for the waiver, and if denied, continue applying until it is granted. This is arguably not a huge burden on the governor's staff. We did start this conversation with the governor's office. However, given the many competing priorities, they are not presently focused on a waiver request at this time. Other objections I have heard are that the junk foods are cheaper than healthy foods. Thus, we need to request an increase in SNAP funding before we limit junk food purchases. And in response, I would say that this is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP participants are not prevented from using their own money for junk food, as the taxpayer has no obligation to provide Mountain Dew and Twinkies. If users spent every SNAP dollar on healthy foods and we learn it still is not enough, then we can have that conversation. Right now, we don't know if that is a problem. The bottom line is this: Wyoming can do better. We know people are struggling. We don't need to make the wrong decision easy by allowing taxpayer-funded access to foods that are killing our most vulnerable populations through preventable diseases. I hope you can support this important bill, and I will stand for your questions.
Thank you, Representative Wasserberger. Committee, any questions? Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Representative Wasserberger. So I'm curious on why you included artificial sweeteners in there. Wouldn't it be better if we pushed people towards non-sugar drinks?
Representative Wasserberger.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess with the intent of this bill, it'd be to prevent sugary, well, yeah, a lot of the things like soda and candy bars. So, I mean, you could have candy bars with artificial sweeteners or sodas with artificial sweeteners. So it'd just be excluding those type of foods from the SNAP purchases program and just having it be more for things like juice and yogurt, things of that nature. And so that's why I have artificial sweeteners included in that part of the bill.
Follow-up, Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, so thank you. Representative Wasserberger, it actually would exclude juice. So if it's 100% juice, that wouldn't be allowed either, because that's got natural sweetener, it's a non-alcoholic beverage, it's greater than 50% fruit juice by volume. So juice wouldn't be allowed. I'm thinking of like tea with sweetener, even if it's artificial sweetener, they'd have to only go for unsweetened tea. I think if we're going to make a policy decision on soft drinks and junk food, we should at least nudge them in a better direction. Do you hesitate? I mean, should we put exclusions for juice too? I mean, it seems like you thought it would allow juice, but it definitely doesn't allow juice.
Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess when you look at a lot of juice contents, there's, added preservatives, added sugars, and things of that nature. And so I guess being that it has the juice in there, I guess that would be an exclusion as well.
Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this, and I'm really in agreement here with you. I just want to, you mentioned Twinkies, which probably aren't candy, but they're a dessert, right? I'm thinking about adding desserts and ice cream to this, if you'd see that as a friendly amendment, so I'll ask that question. And then the other question is, what about sodas like Coke Zero, right? There's no sugar in it, right? No calories. It's just more of a way of getting, maybe getting some fluids into somebody who doesn't want to drink water. But so just being open to looking at sugar-free drinks would be okay, but then also adding desserts and ice cream to the list of items you couldn't purchase.
Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you. And yeah, I would be willing to recognize that as a friendly amendment. I'm pretty sure in the bill there, it does state that artificial sweeteners would be excluded in there, along with things like artificial honey or sweeteners like honey. And so, but yes, I would be willing to find that as a friendly amendment, as we are finding that in a lot of our sugar-free soda drinks, that they're typically not being found to have a lot of health issues as well that are relating to the Medicaid expansions.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Representative Wasserberger. We will move on to public comment. Are there any government agencies that would like to testify on House Bill 323 SNAP benefits? Good morning. Please state your name and your take on the bill.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, my name is Corinne Schmidt. I'm the Director of the Wyoming Department of Family Services. Our agency administers the SNAP program. And I am here just to be available for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions of Department of Family Services? Representative Yen.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Director, appreciate you being here. So because this was over 300 bill, there's no fiscal note, right? So if a waiver was adopted by the feds, what administrative changes would be required?
Madam Chairwoman,
Director Schmidt.
Representative Yin. In terms of administrative impact, there probably would be very little. The food benefits are issued directly from the federal government to the recipients. Those dollars do not pass through our agency. So if there was any change to the food package, it would be felt at the federal level, not at the state.
Thank you. Additional questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment? We've got 3 seats up here, so come on up if you'd like to speak on House Bill 323, SNAP benefits. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. State your name and your take on the bill.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, representatives. Thanks again for having me. I got to meet you all last week. I'm Marcus Coolidge, from Natrona County. I'm a resident doc. I wasn't planning on attesting. I was just kind of wanting to listen, and I don't know that I have a great for or against this bill, but my question, which I think Representative Costa and Representative Yin were kind of alluding to, my only concern is, as a physician, I spend like half of my life trying to encourage against the things that are being limited in this bill. I just want to make sure the things that I'm encouraging are not going to be limited by this bill. And so I don't know all of the things that are alternatives to like soft drinks, like things that are clearly sodas, but then like all the bubbly waters and those types of other things that we use a lot in medicine to try to encourage people away from the less good things. And some of those have some artificial sweeteners, some of those have other things that I think would potentially be limited by this. And so I just request that that's kind of very clear, because I think if we take away soft drinks, which, like I said, I spent half my life encouraging people not to drink, but don't like have alternatives to that are still healthy choices within this, I think it could be very limiting for my patients. So I appreciate your consideration. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for soon-to-be Dr. Coolidge? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Any registered lobbyists?
Why, yes, Madam Chair.
Good
Jeff
morning,
Daugherty.
welcome. Please
Thank
state
you.
your name and your take on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jeff Daugherty. I'm here today representing FGA Action. This is a bill that they are very supportive of, and we're very grateful to Representative Wasserberger for bringing this bill forward. We had planned to hear this later in the week and had hoped to have some folks from the RFK administration, but we'll try to engage them at some other point. I did want to let the committee know that we did start this conversation with Ms. Davis in the governor's office, and while I think that she understood the value, what I didn't understand is that she was leaving last Friday, and that might explain why this was not a priority for them. But anyway, I would just be, I'd like to bring the committee's attention. We do have Brian Sikma with FGA online as well. He's a subject expert in this, and so he would be happy to describe and answer any further questions the committee may have.
Any questions of Mr. Daugherty? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Zoom. Thanks for joining us. Good morning. Please state your name and your take on House Bill 323.
Hey, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Sikma, and I work with the Foundation for Government Accountability and also a few other conservative groups that are interested in making America healthy again. And I want to thank Representative Wasberger for bringing this legislation forward. This is actually really important when we start looking at the state of health in America, particularly among those that are underserved populations and are eligible for government assistance. We're really not in good shape overall. As a veteran, one statistic that I default to is the fact that according to a Pentagon study, 77% of young Americans ages 17 to 24 are ineligible to join the military because of health restrictions. And that is driven in no small part by obesity. In fact, if for individuals who are on the SNAP program for young people, they are 43% more likely to be obese than those that are not on SNAP. And really what it comes down to, and I think, is making sure that federal dollars that are administered by the state are really directing people into healthy lifestyle choices. We want to make sure that kids don't fall into the trap, that families don't fall into the trap of just using these dollars to purchase foods that are not nutritious, that don't lead to positive health outcomes for them. That's, first of all, good for them because we want these individuals to be healthy, productive members of society. I think we all want to see kids go on and achieve their maximum potential as much as possible. And the second thing, though, is that it's really important for states, including the state of Wyoming, to look at this because a lot of the folks that qualify for SNAP benefits are, of course, eligible for Medicaid. And so those are populations where if they are making unhealthy choices in the food that they consume, and that will compound into medical issues that will then need to be paid for by Medicaid, which has a very direct and rising cost when it comes to both state and federal taxes to pay for that program. So certainly as we look at what is happening across our country today, I'm excited to be able to support this legislation. And I know that this is of extraordinary interest at the federal level as well, with a number of key folks, as we heard Mr. Doherty mention. RFK Jr. is looking to make sure that our government programs that are providing important assistance and sustenance to underserved populations are at least directed towards ensuring that those choices that they make are actually in their best interest in making them as healthy as possible. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions from you or the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Sigma. Any questions, committee? Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sigma. I'm not familiar with FGA. Can you just, again, federal government accountability, is this a government office? Is this a private organization? Can you tell me a little bit about your...
Mr. Sigma.
Madam Chair, Representative. So the Foundation for Government Accountability, we believe in holding government accountable. We are not any sort of, I don't receive any government dollars. I've not taken a government paycheck since my last military paycheck. But we're an organization that works to empower individuals across every level of government, local, state, federal, to achieve their maximum potential. We work to advocate for welfare reform, for workforce reform, to really make sure that as taxpayers, we invest in public safety net programs, but we want those programs to actually be achieving positive results that lead to lasting change and that allow individuals to improve their lives and not get trapped in any sort of cycle of dependency on any sort of government assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Sigma. Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other folks online? Okay. All right, no other folks online. So with that, I will close public comment on House Bill 323, SNAP benefits waiver requests. Committee, what is your pleasure? The bill has been moved by Representative McCann and seconded by Representative Clouston. Let's go into discussion on the bill or amendment requests. Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, I move that we amend the bill. So I'm on line 1, page 1, line 16, strike or natural or artificial, strike or artificial. And then on page 2, line 5, strike or artificial.
The amendment's been moved by Representative Yin. Is there a second? seconded by Representative Clouston. Discussion on the amendment.
Madam
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So even as read, this would actually prevent cough drops from being banned from SNAP benefits. I think that there is a benefit of restricting access to sugary foods. But I think as the doctor that testified, having alternatives is important. And so it's not easy to move off of sugar. Sugar is very, very addicting. I think we all know that. Having an alternative that is at least not going to cause harm, I think is important to put in place there.
Thank you, Representative Yin. So further discussion on the amendment. Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to, can you explain what we're crossing out again? I didn't catch the part on page 2 that we're crossing out.
Yep, so the amendment is, that's been moved, is page 1, line 16. We remove or artificial sweeteners. And then on page 2, line 5, the same thing. We remove or artificial sweeteners.
Thank you.
So Madam Chairman.
Representative Yin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So for example, let's say I was buying Coca-Cola on my SNAP benefits. This would still allow me to buy Coke Zero, so at least I have somewhere to transition to when I get off of my sugary soft drinks. That, while not super healthy, is still better than a sugary drink, and it I think still provides a little bit more accountability with the SNAP benefits.
Further discussion on the amendment. Representative Gugemas.
This is, our son went through a cancer thing, and so we did a lot of research on foods and stuff, and I this bill is great. It's a step in the right direction. And I know artificial, you limit that, you're limiting virtually everything on the shelf these days. I'm hoping with the RFK Jr. Thing, we'll be able to get back on track nationally to get our foods healthy again, because they are literally poisonous. And your artificial stuff, aspartame, for one, horrible for you. But I think we got to make a step. But if we if we take too big of a step, you do limit everything, because all this stuff is in our foods these days. So just a comment.
Vice Chair Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted a little clarification in agreement with what Representative Gugemas just said. It's a step in the right direction for sure. But are we just, on the amendment, would it just be or artificial and leave sweeteners in there? Because it would say honey or other natural sweeteners or natural in combination.
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, yes, that's correct. So honey or sugar, still banned. So you buy a candy bar or a full sugar Coke or a high fructose corn syrup Coke, those all would still be banned.
Further discussion on the amendment. We're on the amendment. Okay, seeing none, sensing the urge to vote, by a show of hands and a voice vote, all those in favor of Representative Yin's amendment to delete artificial sweeteners, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, your amendment has passed. Further amendments, further discussion on House Bill 323.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to move the amendment right now with ice cream and desserts. I think if this goes to the floor, that's something we could work with the bringer at that point and kind of figure out that language, because it looks like we'd have to put in definitions. It's probably a little bit more than we can handle right now in this committee, but just to let you know, I'll work with anybody who wants to work on that, and with the bringing of the bill, that we can maybe include a few more things to tighten this up.
Representative Gugemas.
During our journey in the family with what we went through, my wife has discovered incredible alternatives. And so like, we can make ice cream without sugar. I mean, sugar is cancer's food. It loves sugar. That's what it feeds on. And it's amazing the alternatives out there, and I hope we get more information out to the people that there are alternatives. But so I'm saying that just, if we were to, put that language in there of ice cream or something like that, just know that there are alternatives. If we could somehow tweak it to where it's sugar content or something along those lines, I don't know if that is a possibility, because there's so many alternatives out there to where you can have your desserts, but they're healthy, even though they taste great. I mean, my wife is a miracle worker in that department. She's really good at that. So I don't want to limit that aspect. If companies start to gravitate towards a healthier approach, that we wouldn't be stifling them in any way.
Thank you, Representative Gugemas. Sensing he is enthusiastic about working on amendments for the floor. Committee, further discussion. Question being called by Representative Yin on the bill. Mr. Caldwell, if you'd call the roll on House Bill 323.
This is a roll call for House Bill 323 as amended. Representative Clouston.
Aye.
Representative Gugemas.
Aye.
Representative Heft. Representative McCann. Representative Ottman.
Aye.
Representative Stivar. Representative Wasserberger. Representative Yen.
No.
Chairman Rodriguez Williams. Madam Chairman, that is 7 aye, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Committee, thank you for your hard work this morning. Rumor is that we might potentially be meeting earlier for the remainder of the week. So when the speaker makes those announcements, or the majority floor leader, pay attention, but we'll definitely give you notice if that happens, just giving you a heads up. Members of the public, thank you for joining us this morning, and those online, and our meeting is adjourned.